Hello and welcome to Secret Spice. I am your hostess, Cinnamon Alvarez, here with Dominic Syracuse from the Dominus Manifesto. And today we're talking about fear. Ooh, you could see he prepared in advance.
I did. I'm excited. I can't stand here because if I stand here and my head blocks it, it just looks like I am the liar. It's like
fear. No, I see fear, liar.
Yeah, so that's kind of tough. I got to kind of like move.
Fear is a liar.
Right. You can see I hope this, this kind of foreshadows what we're talking about today.
So are you interested? Do you want me to read a little list of most common fears in business?
Yes, that sounds awesome.
Does that sound interesting?
That sounds great.
Okay, go ahead. And I already kind of drew a conclusion.
Okay. Let me hear you.
From like my personal summary of these, but these are, and I apologize, there's a lot of them. There's 12. Okay.
Oh.
So number 1, fear if someone finds out who you really are.
Imposter syndrome.
Right. Fear 2, scared of setting goals.
Interesting.
3, don't believe you can succeed. 4, don't want to appear arrogant. 5, don't ask for help.
Yep.
Which I just have to tell you there that is one of the biggest secrets to success. Number 6, scared of saying no. Also a big one for success, being able to say no. Okay. Fear 7, petrified of public speaking. 8, phoning people. And what's interesting about that, there's little explanations. What I think is really valuable to see about the fear of failing people is people don't want to disrupt the person they're calling. Like I think I know for myself, I can empathize with the person who gets a solicitation phone call. So they don't want to do that.
I get that. That.
Number 9, I don't want to look stupid. Number 10, I can't stop scrutinizing what people are thinking. Number 11, I'm scared to ask for what I want. Same thing to ask for help, ask for what you want. And 12, I can't take the time out, the fear of time. Or like in business, a lot of people. Oh my
gosh, yeah.
Right, you go into business thinking you get to set your own hours and then you realize it's so much work and I don't want to work so hard. But here's my conclusion, and you can tell me if you agree or not. Like if I was gonna limit it down to 1 or 2 hierarchy, I think the number 1, the fear of how we look and how we're perceived, is pretty much in all of it.
Yes, that is huge. That is huge. And I do the majority of my training on that right away.
Isn't that interesting? Because I do also believe that one of our biggest desires is to be seen.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
To be seen, to belong, to be loved. And then on the other side, it's the fear of being seen, of being rejected.
Right.
Of being judged by like our family, for example. Of being embarrassed, of being inadequate in some way, of inconveniencing people, of being perceived as selfish. It's like looking good conversations.
Right. Okay. This is I'm so glad you brought this up. It's kind of like a soapbox of mine.
Okay. Yeah.
Because first off, just being listened to triggers the same chemicals in the brain as being hugged or being loved or being nurtured. So right away, we are chemically designed.
Yep.
Right. We are chemically designed to want to be heard. And to want to have what our wants expressed and heard and met. Right. So, but here's what's amazing. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I always talk about how petrified people are of public speaking, of standing out, of all this stuff. And when I learned this lesson, I learned it when I was teaching kids. Have I told you this?
I don't think so.
Oh, this is my favorite story to tell.
Okay.
Whenever I do any kind of clinics with businesses, whenever I do any public speaking, this is the first story I tell because it's the most exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, because I do tell a story, and we have talked about the survival of being dependent on our mother to care for us.
Yes, this is a little different.
Related? Okay, good. So
no, it's much different. So here's what it was. I was teaching acting to elementary school kids. So I did a whole thing, and I got to teach everything from pre-K all the way to sixth grade. Now, what was so funny, what I realized was I had the classes in order. I had kindergarten, or preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and then third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. From preschool to second grade, what I would do is I would get up and I would say, all right, everybody, show me your craziest face. Let me see who's the craziest one here. And, they would go nuts. They'd be like, yeah, and they'd roll around on the floor. And it was just banana. It was like a bomb went off. I mean, it was so much fun. Everybody's laughing and everybody's going, look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. Look at me. Look at mine.
And then you get older and they're like.
And then you get to the third graders. And as soon as third grade starts, this amazing thing happens where I would say, all right, everybody, show me your craziest face. And they would all go just like this.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd look around at everybody
to see
else.
If anyone else was doing it.
And it was silent. It was completely silent. And you'd hear, without fail, you'd hear one person each time go, I'll do it if you do it. Are you going to do it? What? And then somebody would have the bravery to go like, eh. And then they'd retreat like a turtle, right? And then when someone would do it, another person would do it, and it would be like pulling teeth to try to get them out of it. And I ask people when I tell them that story, what's the difference between what's the difference between second grade and below and third grade?
Yeah, what is
and the answer is, at that age is when we become aware of what others think of us. When you're 6 years old, the last thing you're thinking of is, I wonder how that person perceives me.
Right.
You don't care. You hear kids all the time. They have no problem expressing their wants. You go into any store and listen to a child below the age of 5. All you hear is, I want that. I want that. Give me this. Let's do this. Let's all run. Like they just, whatever comes to their heart or their mind comes out. But we're kind of beaten into submission. We're told, hey, stop that. Don't behave that way. And as we were talking about earlier, but off camera, thinking about others is important. That's the crux of empathy. But thinking about the way others might be thinking of you really is a reflection of your own judgment. It's like, well, I judge others, so they must be judging me.
So they're judging me back. Yeah.
Right. So that's that. But then at the same time, if you flip the script on that psychology, it's, well, I have thoughts and ideas. They must have thoughts and ideas too. If I express mine, maybe they'll express theirs. We'll all listen to one another. There's an interesting thing that happens there. But the biggest thing is that we become aware of what others think of us, or more importantly, how we think others might think of us. Mm-hmm. And then we start repressing ourselves. We start silencing ourselves. We start going, I would say this, but I don't want them to think this. I would say this, but I don't want them to think that. I would say this, but I don't want them, and that hinders us from getting anything.
Being expressed from the rest of our lives. So, which is what we're craving right now. Right. Which is probably why YouTubing is so possible, because we get these captive audiences. We just get to pretend like we could talk to each other, but we could pretend like there's millions of people listening to us right now.
Right.
But then we can be terrified, because what if there are people listening to us right now?
Yes.
And they're thinking, oh no, I know how Cinnamon votes politically, or I think that she's she had that thing on her skin and she didn't put her lipstick on today. And
right. And let me tell you this right here.
Craziness.
Fear is a liar. You know, in jail, we would give the fear acronym. Do you know the fear acronym when I taught in prison?
Tell me the fear acronym.
Fear acronym. It's, I'm going to go try to point. Okay. False evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
Fear. False evidence appearing real. And let me tell you why that's true in my life. I have something written on my wall, and it says just 2015. That's all I have written on my wall. 2015. And the reason is because I started my YouTube channel in 2019, but I had the idea for it in 2015.
It took that long.
And it took me 4 years, and I had all these fears. I had all these fears of what if it's too polarizing? What if people hate me? What if I say my stuff and nobody likes it? What if, and you know what's the funniest one? Is my most popular video on my channel is the story I tell about the time I went on a gay date on accident.
Yeah, that's my favorite too.
Yeah. And that's the most popular video on my channel. It's got, right now it's pushing about 6,000 views. And my channel only has about just under 2,000 subscribers. But here's the amazing part about it, is that when I recorded that video, I was
that
petrified.
The scariest one? Yeah.
I was petrified. You know why? And here's why, once again, false evidence appearing real. I was petrified because I was so afraid that it was going to come off as rude to the LGBTQ community. I was so afraid that it was going to come off as I'm making fun of being homosexual in any way. But everyone was like, oh, that's my favorite story you tell. It's so funny, you know, all this stuff. And also, it's about a real person. It really happened. Like,
it's a real story, right? It's totally legit. Yeah.
It totally happened. And so here's the funniest part.
Well, I don't know if you really made those comments about their pecs and stuff.
Oh, yeah. No, that's all true.
That's all. I could totally see you saying all of that.
Yeah, it all happened.
The outfit.
Here's the point. Here's the funniest part. Now on my channel, it's my highest rated video, and you can look at the demographic. The highest demographic that watches that video is the LGBTQ community, and out of all the comments on it,
and they're the most supportive.
There's over 1,000 comments. I've never heard anything but like
no
graciousness, thank yous. Literally, like, there are people all the time who are like, oh my gosh, like, my favorite is
you are the sweetest thing ever.
Well, the biggest one I get is they go, oh my gosh, like, I'm gay and I went on a straight date one time. And, you know, and we just share these stories. And so here's what's funny. The thing that the fear was biggest for me on, the thing that I was so afraid of going out there and doing, ended up not only not even being true, it ended up being the opposite of what actually happened. You know, like, here I am thinking that I'm going to be, you know, ostracized by, you know, the LGBTQ community or something. And instead, it's like, you know, I get comments all the time. Oh my gosh, I wish all straight people were like you. Or, you know, like these kind of things, which I only bring that up just to say, oh my gosh, like, if I would have listened to my fear, I would have never done that video. I would have, and not only would I have never made any of those connections that I've made, but, you know, it's just amazing. And so often I think people, whatever you're fearing is, I just feel the opposite.
Yeah.
Is true.
Here's what I think is interesting, why I wanted to talk about fear today, is I read an article in Psychology Today, and fear is not natural. It is learned.
Oh, that's fascinating.
That's what I found fascinating. So, you know, nurture versus nature, the argument is 50-50, right? So there are people who are predisposed to having reaction, more negative reaction.
Sure.
But it's an event that happens. So like they did a study of like with little children, young age children with snakes and spiders.
Right.
And what's interesting is that small children are very attracted to snakes and spiders.
Yes.
But they want to play with them. On a screen, they reach out and they grab them. They don't learn to have fear of them until they see someone else's reaction.
Right.
They perceive other people's reactions, or something bad happens to themselves. So when you're talking to the story about between second grade and third grade, is what is happening at that age is we're probably getting the conception, the preconceived notion of like, I'm not good enough somehow, right?
Right.
We're embarrassed, or our parents are disappointed in us, or we have an unfulfilled expectation and we get disappointed.
And fear, at least in from my understanding of it and my studies of it, is correlated as well to pain. And by pain, you said something interesting. It's either learned or through experience. Something happens. And now here's what is fascinating about it, I think, is that when my child was a toddler, my goodness, it was like he was trying to kill himself. Everything. He's shoving forks into electrical sockets, and he doesn't want to play with the toys you give him. You give him a nice soft toy. He's like, no, I would much rather take this pencil and shove it in my eye. And that's just how, and you're like going around like, are you kidding me? Stop it. But I realized it was because he has no reference of pain. He has no idea that's going to hurt him. And how do you find out it's going to hurt you? By doing it.
Cause and effect. So that's what I think is fascinating, is the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until you're almost 23 years old.
Right.
And so if people don't know, because we're geeks already, we know this, but like if you touch a hot stove and you get burned and you're like, oh, then you don't do that again. So that's why teenagers are more susceptible to peer pressure, because they can't conceive of this idea. If I do this bad thing will happen, unless they've experienced it, or they know somebody else who's experienced
it. And what's so funny about that is that, so I taught in prison for 3 years, and I took some time. I got transferred over to a juvenile hall. So I was talking to teenagers. And here's what's so funny is that you had these people in prison who were just like, and I learned a lot of lessons through them, seeing their experience. They lived this kind of wild, reckless life, and they've seen the consequence of it. So they've seen the consequence of drugs. They've seen the consequence of crime. They've seen the consequence of crazy stuff they thought was a good time. And now they're living it out. And so I wanted to go share that with the teenagers, but the teenagers could not get it because they hadn't had they hadn't seen the other side of it. They hadn't seen the consequences of it. And so it was so funny because I try to give an example, and I'd say, like if you're hanging out with a bunch of your friends and they say, hey, let's all drink as much as we can and drag race down the road. When I would say that in jail, you'd get everybody going like this. Oh my gosh, no. When I'd say it in juvie, I'd give that same example. They would go, that sounds awesome. Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun. Because they haven't seen the other side of it.
Yeah.
And so, but to kind of complete the whole thing is that with fear, you burn your hand on the stove. And then you forever can go, oh yeah, don't touch the stove. It hurts. But here's the problem, is that as we get older, things become more nuanced and complex, but we have that same infantile mindset about the stove. So what I mean is, you're in a relationship and you're with a girl and the girl cheats on you. And then you have the same mindset of the stove, which is don't trust any woman.
That's
women hurt you. The same way the stove burnt me.
It's even in our language. In fact, one of the other reasons I wanted to talk about it today, I was thinking about in business is, this is the true reason that it popped on my mind, why I thought, oh, fear, let's do this, is because I was thinking to myself, we have to be careful not to get burned. That's the way we say it in our head. You have to be careful not to get burned. So what's happening in business, right, is I call it business acumen, is you have enough experience that you start to, like, almost intuitively, you can see warning signs. Mm-hmm. So we have a very large order, right? And I have somebody who's been working their way up, one of my employees who's been working her way up, she's been taking more and more responsibility. but she's not as caught. She's not seeing little things. So we always get like a 50% deposit on a large custom order. We always get the balance before it ships, right? And now with the economy, I'm like, we have to be more careful. Don't give credit, you know. And so we got a check for the full amount, not a deposit. I'm embarrassed. See, my fear is that I'm going to look like, whoa, you've been in how much business, how many years in business, and you didn't take the precautions for this. She didn't get the deposit. It's like the biggest order of the year. We got the lump sum in a check, which could bounce anyway. There's a tight deadline. It's going to Puerto Rico, and it just, and it just so, like, all the warning signs are like, be careful, right? Make sure that, And we get the check, and so of course I look at it, and you just know intuitively, like, okay, this is a large check. Is it good? Right? Don't get burned is what's in my head. And right on the check, it says 2 signatures required. And the very first thing I see is 1 signature.
Oh.
And so I'm like, caution, caution, right?
Yeah.
So I tell her, nope. And then I call the bank, you know, wire. And even there, I'm like, okay, we have to be careful if we're giving our bank information, our routing, you know, there's all these vulnerabilities. Like, what is the best way to handle this? If somebody pays by credit card, you have merchant fees, and they could do chargebacks, and it's all about, how do we protect ourselves? This is a large sum of money. And so that's what was in my mind. And I'm not terrified over that, but believe me, I still get triggered by plenty of fears. Yes. Because they're always there. We just don't even, that's the bad news for anybody listening, right? Is that, well, you can hear now that they're, you know, a young conversation, or they're triggered by an event, or it's not real. But guess what? It's going to blindside you and take you out anyway.
Yes. And now, and yes. And so here's the thing. Here's why I believe, and this is part of my training. This is part of the trainings I give everywhere from prisons to CEO boardrooms, is that fear is, as Customato said. Customato was the boxing legend coach who trained Mike Tyson and all this stuff. He said, fear is your best friend, not your worst enemy. And here's what he meant by that. So many people have made fear their worst enemy. Fear is the reason they don't do whatever it is they want to do.
Set the goal.
Right. For all 12 of those reasons, fear, they have a fear of something. And normally, once again, it's always a fear of pain. The brain equates emotional pain to
physical pain.
It can't tell it. Your brain is geared to make you avoid pain. And so if you think go back to that list of 12, you can impose a fear.
Which could be as simple as looking stupid.
Pain. Yes. Well,
I don't want to make the phone call because I might look stupid, or I might inconvenience them, and then they think I'm not respectful.
Exactly. I don't want to be a nuisance.
I don't want to be a nuisance.
If that person looks at me and thinks I'm a nuisance, then that's going to hurt me emotionally.
Right.
And I don't want to be thought of as a nuisance. That's painful.
To a perfect stranger. You don't want a perfect stranger to think you're a nuisance. Like we go to fantasy land, right?
Right. And what's, okay. So here's but once again, it's important to know, it's so important to know that a lot of fear comes from past examples. So my son, when he was a kid, he would play on the play set like a madman. I mean, he'd be a 3-year-old leaping from, you know, high rise to high rise and all this stuff. And then one day he fell, you know, broke his leg.
And he doesn't do that anymore.
Then on, he was cautious, you know, very cautious. And it was timid, and it took him a long time to get back up there because he realized that dangers are real. And so let's talk about danger.
Which is my fear of skiing now. Like the first time I fell down, I was like, woohoo, I have nothing to lose. Well, now after I've had ACL reconstruction, and it took like 18 months to recover, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that anymore.
Right. So here's what's neat is I like to use the example of, have you ever seen those guys in squirrel suits? Literally dudes who jump off like plains and mountains, and they've got suits with wings, and they just soar through the air, and it's amazing crazy to see. It's crazy. But here's the thing. It's not that they are fearless. They are controlled by fear, but in a good way. Here's what I mean.
The positive association.
Yes, here's what I mean. If you and I were to jump off a ledge, the fear would hold us back. We'd think about all the dangers. We'd go, I could crash into that rock. I could, what if the suit tears? There's all these what ifs. And that fear is stopping us from taking the jump ever. Our brain is going hazard, 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 caution, 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 and going, okay, great. What these men are doing, they have the exact same fear, these men and women. But what they do is they go, okay, if I crash into that rock, I'm dead. So I have to take the jump and be aware of that the whole time. And so long as I'm aware of it, aware of the danger, I can not only avoid the danger, but I can also enjoy the rush that comes from knowing the experience. Right. It's setting the boundary. And so, and I know my suit could tear. So I'm going to spend all this time making sure that it's reinforced, making sure that it's where it needs to be. And when I went skydiving, the instructor told me something interesting. He said, here's how it goes. It goes confident, cocky, comfortable, dead. And the way that goes is it starts with confident, as in, okay, I've reinforced the suit. I've made sure everything is where it needs to be. I've practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. I'm confident. I know all the possible dangers and I've prepared. I'm confident. Cocky is when you start going, hey, I've done this so long.
I've done this so many times. I'm not going to have some band strapped to my back.
Exactly.
That doesn't look good for one.
Right.
It's way cooler to free fall on your own.
Exactly. That's when you start understanding that there are fears, but you're better than them, right? Then there's comfortable. Comfortable is when you're not taking into account any of the fears at all. I do this 1 trillion times. I've done this, blah, 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 blah.
Autopilot.
Right. And that's when
like when a perfect example of that is, car accidents usually happen closer to home within that 5-mile radius.
Right.
Because it's like we're in a hypnotic state. We just go into autopilot. We're not really paying attention. That's comfortable.
Exactly. So the funny thing is, more problems happen when you're an expert of something because you get so comfortable. But the reason I also believe that fear is your best friend, and this is what I train people on, because a lot of people say, well, I'm not confident. Because a lot of people think the opposite of fear is confidence. They're like, I'm not confident. I'm not confident. And I go, in what? All confidence is repeated practice. Trust in yourself. So if you're not confident public speaking, that just means
you haven't done it for 10,000
You haven't done it enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is, okay, if you're afraid of public speaking, what are your fears? Well, I'm afraid I'm going to stutter. I'm afraid people are going to think I'm dumb. I'm afraid blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, now write your script, what you want to say, practice it over and over and over. And that's what practice is. Practice is overcoming the fear. It's looking at whatever fear you might have and literally just overcoming it. You're not going to stutter if you've practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. You're not going to come off as non-confident if you can get up and say these words, because you've said them 1,000 times.
Let me interrupt here. Let's say that the objective is to be not afraid.
Right.
Okay. But I have a different theory. In fact, I was interviewed for like a live stream business summit yesterday. Yeah.
Cool.
And I was asked, I'm sorry, did you say, what was it?
Yeah.
So Tigo has, oh shoot. Now I'm just going to be so embarrassed because I'm not going to pull it off the tip of my tongue.
No, that's okay.
Okay. So she has a show that's on Amazon and different television channels, Expert Talk.
Awesome.
And she's also doing a business summit series, and I'm one of the talks. It'll be like a 3-day free, and you can listen to all of these people do it.
This is amazing.
Yeah, so she was having like the pre-summit, interviewing all the people, like these little 15-minute segments.
Congratulations. This is awesome.
Oh, thank you. So, this also probably got the idea of talking about fear percolating, because she was talking about how I volunteer with SCORE, and we look at business plans. And, a lot of people are afraid of starting a business.
Yes.
And I said that, the benefit of planning, actually the most respectful thing is probably getting to know. A lot of people will start their business anyway because they don't do the planning, or they don't want to do the work and really understand that maybe it's not a good idea. Like maybe it doesn't financially work in their best interest. And then she said, well, what about when it's a really great idea, but somebody's afraid? And so I was psychoanalyzing my answers, like thinking, I didn't answer well enough at that time, which is what had me thinking about. But because I said, well, the thing about fear is you do it anyway, right? It's like you bring it with you. And I just tell myself, that means I'm excited. Like the line between fear and excitement it's the same feeling in our body.
They're biologically the exact same thing.
Because one of the biggest recommendations for I call it future fantasy is, and it works. If people do, the studies show that it works. If people say, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? Like that's the number one probably advised thing if you're really afraid of something is you go down future fantasy, worst case scenario, and then you get to say, and then what? And then what? And most of our fears exist as though we're going to die, right?
Yep.
But worst case scenarios, we're probably not going to die. And when we really peel it back, we're actually going to end up benefiting from it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And yes.
But what was so interesting about the article in Psychology Today, though, was learning that it's learned, and just coincidentally, it's like other people's reactions. And so you think about like, who are those people who love haunted houses? Who are the people who love the scary movie? Who are the people like you and I both love skydiving, right? Of course.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Those thrill seekers. So we were teaching ourselves, right, that's a good thing, that's a feeling. I don't think it was just natural that we're like, I like it.
Yes. Yes.
So that I have a funny true story. So this morning, coincidentally, before I read that, but now I'm telling myself it's okay, because I still do have the fear of what will people think, right? If we're really honest, I don't want to say that's true. I think I'm fairly comfortable in my own skin, but I let fear of unknown and other stuff take me out often. But one of the things I did this morning to help my employees have positive association with fear.
Nice.
I'm just pretending like that was the reason why.
No, I get it.
I'm really just sneaky. And I think it's funny. I scare them. So,
Wait, really? Like
I really did. Like,
what did you do?
It was early in the morning. And, a lot of times I like to go down. I like to say, good morning. And I like to be obnoxious and have people roll their eyes and be like, oh, Cinnamon.
Right.
But so Jose, though, I'm like, ooh, where is he? And the idea is in an instant. And so I sneak around the corner, tiptoe. And I pop up and I go, good morning. And you see I got him. So of course it's super satisfying to me, but then I'm watching because I want to make sure he's not pissed at me.
Right.
So I'm watching for the expression from F you to, and then the smile comes, and then he's probably daydreaming about it. So now I have to be careful because we've played this game before. Now I have to watch my back because he'll get me.
Well, so the thing is like you said, there's so many studies that show that anxiety and excitement are the exact same physiologically. Your blood races, your heart pumps, you start feeling light and kind of lightheaded. The difference is whether you think you're going to be okay or you think you're going to be in danger. That's the difference. So a roller coaster, someone's in line for a roller coaster, or the haunted house.
You trust that it's safe. Yeah.
Right. If someone's going into a haunted house, they're like, I know it's fake. I know it's fine. I know I'm going to be okay. This is going to be exciting. Someone who's like, I don't trust that. It really comes down to trust. A roller coaster. I trust it's going to be fine. It's going to be exhilarating. It's going to be fun. Another person is going, what if this thing flies off the rails? What if it breaks? What? Yeah. And that's the difference. But here is why I think that fear is actually an ingredient to greatness. You said it a second ago, and you said it beautifully. The same way that happiness is a choice. We hear this all the time. Someone's like, people think, oh, I'm only happy if blah, 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 right? That's not the case. Yeah. Happiness is a means of travel. Happiness is an outlook. If you can find the bright side of anything, you can choose to be happy about anything. Bravery is a choice. Everybody feels fear. Everybody. But it's those who make the choice to act in spite of the fear. Mm-hmm. That's called bravery.
Choose to feel it and choose to do it anyway.
Right. Yeah. You just make the choice, you know. But here's actually why I'm a big fan of, whenever I feel fear, I go like this. I go, okay, I'm worried about something. And here's why I'm just going to dive in head first to it anyway, is because to me, it's a win-win situation. So for instance, I do stand-up and I get horrified before every show. In fact, I just got booked. Oh, all the time. I just got booked for a show coming up on November 6th. This place wanted to do a big show. And my first reaction is I'm horrified right away. And here's all the things I'm horrified of. I'm horrified it's not going to be good. I'm horrified it's not going to be funny. I'm horrified I'm not prepared. I'm horrified that a bunch of people are going to come who've already seen my stuff. Yeah. And the lists keep coming up. And it makes me want to go, nope. I don't want to do it. I need more time. Nope. But here's what you find is that the difference between people who achieve greatness and people who don't is not that the people who achieve greatness don't
have any fear. Right. Yeah. They don't practice so much until they're comfortable. Well, they just do it anyway.
Yeah, that, or they've failed more. Because here's what happens. Here's what I've realized. A bad show for me is better than a good show. Because a good show's great. Don't get me wrong. It's like, okay, we did it. Everybody leaves happy. Awesome. But when I have a bad show, instead of making the choice to quit, instead of making the choice to go, oh no, that was bad, I need to give up, I'm a failure, I'm terrible, I'm awful, I shouldn't be doing this. What I do is I look at the footage and I go, okay, what went wrong and why? How do I tighten it up? How do I tweak it? How can I?
Yeah, you use it as the learning experience. But what about the people who are like, yeah, I don't need the learning experience?
Then no, well, and that's okay. Then at the end of the day, they're not gonna do it. And that's that. It once again, just like bravery is a choice and happiness is a choice, actually doing it is a choice as well.
That's true.
And so I like a saying by a guy I really respect called Ed Milet. He's a great motivational speaker and stuff. He said, you don't make a change until the pain that comes from inaction is greater than your fear of the pain from action. As in, like, and I got to that point in my life. I got to a point where, once again, I said that I had the idea for my YouTube channel in 2015. And because of all those fears, I didn't do it for 4 years. And it got to a point where the pain that came from me having all these ideas, all this to say, and not doing it became worse than the fear of whatever I was worried was going to happen.
I would say to anyone that the consequences of no action, of inaction, far more severe than the worst case scenario that you're capable of being afraid of. Right. Like we talked about fear of failing, like people not setting goals. And And like, oh yeah, well, what if you technically fail and you hit your target only by 70% instead of 100%?
Right.
Compared to nothing. But the torture, like our inner critic, we're so capable of being like, well, my voice is really my voice says you suck. It's like, Cinnamon, you suck.
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, and here's what I do. Here's the other side of it for me, is that, you know, in acting, you always hear about this fearless actor. Oh, they're fearless. That's a fearless actor. Or that's a fearless actress. They're fearless. It's not, if they are fearless, the reason that fearlessness exists is because they failed and they've realized that it didn't hurt as bad as they thought. Mm-hmm. That's the most liberating thing for me. When I was a stand-up, I was so afraid of bombing. I was so afraid of bombing. And until I bombed and I went, yeah, that sucked, but that was nowhere near as bad
as I thought it was going to be.
As I thought it was going to be. And then when that happens, you're like, I'm not really as afraid of it anymore. Because the same way that I learned to be afraid, I learned to not fear it. So then you go, okay, now I'm going to go and, you know, and then you find out that when you're bombing because you're in that space and you're like, okay, I'm bombing. How do I get out of this? Or how do I, you know, and then you figure out ways to like make it work. You figure out ways to get out of it.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate for you.
Yeah, let's go.
What about the people who are saying, no, it really was terrible. She broke my heart and I never got over it.
Sure.
Right? Like relationship is an area that people, I think, fear really
and
to take over.
Totally. And
going through a divorce, you know.
Look, I'm in that boat. And like relationships are unbelievably complex because in order for a relationship to work, in order for love to work, you can't be closed off. You've got to be opened up and vulnerable to let someone in. And then you're opened up and vulnerable, and the deeper they get in, the more potential they have
to hurt you.
Right.
Yeah, so some people aren't like me, like better to have loved it once than never to have loved it all. Like I don't know if you know that I am totally the hopeless romantic.
Yes.
When I took the challenge to meet my husband, and he was like newly divorced, and it, you know, the flags were there, and I was like, oh man, I am all in, and this guy could crush me. But okay.
Right.
This is the game I'm playing.
And that is bravery. That is bravery. And I think I like to tell people that your vulnerability is a gift. And I think you should be aware and cautious on as to who you give it to, because there are some people that, you know, if you're vulnerable with, you know, they could hurt you really deeply. And there are some people that you know have been hurt. But what I would say is this, is that there are literally 7 billion people on this earth. More, 8 billion now. It's going to be like 13 billion in a few years. There's so many people on this earth. Each one of them is different. And so when you do get your heart broken, listen, it hurts so bad. There's so many learning experiences. There's so many of that. But it was by one of the 8 billion. You have, you know, if you meet someone new, there's a whole new
There's only a 90% likelihood that they're going to cheat also.
Yeah.
You're going to spend money how you don't like. Right. You're not going to get along.
It's kind of like, imagine, this is a very crude example, forgive me, but it's like, imagine that you only get into one car your whole life and you go, I don't like cars. I don't like any cars on earth. There's no car that is good because I was in one car and I got in an accident. No cars are good. You know, there's so much complexity and nuance to that. And in the same way, it could be reversed. I know a lot of relationships where they had a really, really great relationship, and then they're trying to make their next relationship their previous relationship. Yeah. And the point is, every human being is different. And whenever I like, that's why they use the term chemistry. Oh, there's not chemistry between us, because it's like two completely different elements. Anytime two different elements meet, there's going to be a different reaction.
Yeah.
And,
well, and then
but you've got to have the bravery.
Though, is because once you felt that feeling before,
yeah.
then all of a sudden now you're like looking to recreate that.
Yes. And that's okay. So here's an acting tip.
Okay.
The biggest mistake you can make when you're doing a show every night is trying to recreate last night's show. That's the biggest mistake. You have to be in the moment. So I made that mistake. You know, I was touring in rock and roll bands, and I remember I was in this rock and roll band, and we had this night where the crowd was bananas. People were pulling at my ankles, and we'd play our music, and they were leaping through the air, and I'd jump, and they'd grab me, and the energy was just amazing. And then the next night, by the way, we went from a Saturday, that was a Saturday night, to a Sunday. So now we're playing on a Sunday.
And you want that Saturday night energy again.
And I go out, and this crowd, by the way, the next crowd in the next town, for whatever reason, the venue, everyone's sitting in comforters. There was like comforters and sofas and stuff. So we're playing to people in comforters and sofas. So they're sitting back and they're just chilling. I made the mistake of trying to make this night last night. So I get up and I'm like, let's go, you know, and I'm getting all crazy. And everybody's just like, this is way too much. And I realized, oh, it took me till, you know, 75% of the way of the show. I'm going to match your energy. I'm going to come down, and we're going to chill, and we're going to make this fun. And then everybody started enjoying themselves. You know, you've got to be in the moment. And when it comes to, you know, I've read that one of the key things to keeping depression alive
is being in the present.
Is trying to recreate the past. That to keep
depression alive. Trying to I got it.
Is
one of the big
holding on to the
past.
Yeah, is holding on to the past. Is going, everything used to be like this, and now it's gone, and I want it to be like that again, and I want it to, you know, rather than one of the keys to getting over it is being grateful. Instead of saying, I wish that was still here, you say, I'm grateful that I got to experience it at all. Now I'm open to whatever new experiences are coming my way.
No, that's so valuable. People should pause and replay that section. That's really valuable, because what I was going to say is like in the example when you were talking about going on stage and still getting nervous.
Yeah.
Like what I have that experience sometimes too, where I'm presenting. And so when I'm presenting, what I'm able to do is I'm just able to acknowledge it. And what that does is that gets me present, right? It's like, oh, I'm just noticing that I'm really nervous right now.
Yes.
And that almost helps ground you in that moment and connect you to the audience. And then you're able to be present with them again. But it's interesting, the dance. So yeah, dwelling over the past, I almost see no benefit to. I do love though of having gratitude, because I have fallen into that. Like, I wish I could get it done like I used to, or I was so fit, or like you want the good stuff back.
Right.
So being appreciative that I was able to have that that's golden. I'm going to play with that for sure.
Yeah.
Easy to do. And then I do find that you want enough future fantasy. Like there's the balance between being too far out in future fantasy mode of, oh no, this could happen. Oh, this could happen. But you do want a little bit of excitement of anticipation, kind of like when you're going to book a vacation, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to start the business. And then, so I do think there's a lot of value. Like we create living visions. You can put yourself a year or 2 years out and you can imagine it. There are some interesting studies though on how when you share a goal, some people don't achieve the goal because when you start to talk about it, your body almost is tricked as though you almost already had the experience and you fulfilled on it already.
Right.
So I don't know if you've heard that. That's an interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
like, oh, we had that already.
Yeah. And so a great way of overcoming fear, that's why, you know, okay, actors. That's why actors practice. What practice is, at least for an actor, is doing a trial run of whatever it is you're going to do. And everybody does it. Basketball players play like practice games. And if you're going to prepare for a speech, you practice before. Literally everybody practices. And what you're literally doing is you're putting yourself into the situation in a safe environment where you're able to start and stop and run into the fears beforehand and run. I mean, like when you go skydiving, they don't just like literally hurl you out of a plane. You have to.
No, it's a long day of.
It's a long
all the
process.
preparation and signing liability
this,
and watching videos. Yeah.
Right. Move like this. Practice like this. And so anything you're fearing, listen, fear is just your brain saying, hey, this could cause us harm. So a great way of getting over it is just practicing, is just going, okay, I'm going to live that scenario so that I can experience what it's like. And the more I do it, the more I practice, the more confident I'm going to be. And when I think about as an actor, the stuff that I'm most confident about is the stuff that I've practiced a trillion times. You know, or guitar. If I pick up a guitar and I play you a song I've played for 20 years, I'm going to be very confident with it. Whereas if somebody goes, oh, can you play this song you've never heard of? I'm going to go, I will try, you know.
Or you might be embarrassed, depending on who's there, like the new girl.
Exactly.
So let's get to, okay, so actually I want to give, so you can practice to mastery for sure. Yeah. And I want to leave people with, and do it anyway. Like, so for me, a lot of my mindset tricks that I think are part of what makes me successful is just the reassociate.
Yes.
Is to use fascination and curiosity and awe and appreciation and just be like,
absolutely,
wow, isn't that so fascinating? Look, I'm afraid. And then choosing it powerfully, like, ooh, I'm going to say that I'm excited. I'm going to, you know, and I'm going to pretend. So then I visualize, I'll even pretend like I'm getting ready and I'm on the roller coaster because I love roller coasters. I associate like, here we go, we're going to do it. And I'm going to put myself in the front seat of the roller coaster and I'm going to look up, not knowing what it's like when you drop backwards. And so that's right. So that's for me, I kind of psych myself into like, I'm going to choose the fear. I'm going to choose the fear.
Yes. Let's do this. Cause you being so excited sparked an idea. Can we go through that list one more time? And with each one, how about we just suggest how about we just suggest a flip? Like we suggest a different way of looking at it. Okay. You see what I mean?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Because there's some, I already know, I wanted to tell you, you know, going back to as big as I talk, the ones that I'm worst at, and I can't wait to hear your advice on, are number 3, number 5, and number 10. I have a fear like all 3 of those things were me.
Well, how about for the sake of time, we just do 3, 5, and 10?
Okay. Sounds good.
So of course, that's cool. Did you write those down?
I think so. Those are just the ones I remember. So if you read them back, what I would start with though is I want to tell anybody who's on the other side of the list, and I'm talking about fear of calling people, fear of asking for what you want, fear of whatever. For me, what has helped me in my life, the reason that none of those things kind of bother me anymore is that I've realized that passion is contagious. And so, you know, when there was a time in my life I sold TVs. I wasn't really passionate about TVs, but I had pressure from somebody going, you have to sell this much, you have to sell this much. And then I was afraid to ask for people if they'd like to buy it. I was afraid to ask about, I was afraid to call them. I was all that stuff. But now that I run my own business that I'm super duper passionate about, to me, I don't look at it as me asking for money if I'm looking for donations, or I don't look at it as me asking for a favor or help. If like, oh, help me, I'm not good enough or something. What I look at it as is, hey, I've got this idea. I'm super passionate about this idea. Let me tell you about this idea. Are you interested in partnering? Are you interested in helping? Are you interested in being a part of this thing?
So that's great, because the article talks about how people are afraid to ask, but most people love to give. And so it really is a gift when you're asking for help. People are like, why didn't you ask me sooner? So you already, you already lived that.
It's
like you're inviting them to the party of what you're so excited about.
Right. And if your mindset is either help me, I'm not good enough, and I'm admitting I'm a failure, that's going to be contagious as well. They're going to be feeling that kind of neediness. Or if it's, hey, I really need money, please give me money, you know, that kind of thing. It's coming
no, it's okay to ask for anything but money.
Well, yeah. Or but what if you go like this? Like
that means you're a loser.
Right. Yeah, that's the way they make you feel, right? But instead of it being like that, it's, hey, I've got this dream, I've got this goal, I've got this vision. I need help making it happen. I need your help making it happen, because you have skills that I can use. You have resources that can make this dream happen. Let me share to you this dream. And if you're as passionate about it as I am, now you can play a part in it. And I actually need you. People love.
So Dominic, you're hired. You're hired. Side note, my accountant said, so 1 year, you know, I'm fascinated. That's what my thing that works for me. So I asked my accountant, like, oh, what type of businesses are the most successful? And he says, oh, it doesn't matter the industry. If you're good at sales, you'll make the most money.
Well, there you go.
So there you go.
There you go. Okay. So
number 3, and then we're going to wrap this up and give the challenge, because I'm excited about the challenge. Okay, so fear number 3 is you don't believe you can succeed.
Yes.
Yeah. So in your head, you might be saying, "Oh, I can't. I don't know how.
Real life
doesn't seem possible."
Real life examples, like right away. Like I said, stand-up show. Doesn't matter the fact that I've had 100 successful stand-up shows. The second they go, here's a new stand-up show, I immediately go, oh, and I think about all the things all the problems, all of the difficulties, all of the things that are going to make this hard. And I immediately go, I can't see myself winning. Or on a deeper level, when I made my business, I'd never created anything in the business realm that was successful. So I could not visualize me succeed. I'm like, I have this idea. I can't, it's like when I try to imagine succeeding, it's just a blank canvas, because I haven't achieved.
You don't know what it looks like.
I have no frame of reference.
It's like the 6-minute mile, 4-minute mile. You know,
yes. Yeah. The 4-minute mile. Yeah.
The 4-minute mile, because you haven't ever seen it done. So it's hard to imagine if it's possible. So it's interesting. The article talks about number 3, the fear of failing is what's underneath that fear of you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Which still comes back to how you're going to look. So
it's, or it's an identity thing, I think.
Exactly. And
it's like if I once heard I had a close friend who would always say, you have to change the words from instead of you have to say I fucked up rather than I am a fuck up.
That's right.
Because one is the
so what I do is I use in my vocabulary, I failed all the time. And I think it's just a reminder that doesn't mean I'm a failure. And I do see, part of my selfishness is I see other people get very uncomfortable when I say, oh, I failed. I said I was going to do that yesterday and I failed. And I can see other people be like, oh, but it's just part of my regular thing now.
Yeah.
That to me, it's part of my vocabulary. Yeah. Well, so I failed at that. We failed at getting 2 signatures on the check. So now what are we going to do?
Well, and I feel like that's where wisdom comes from, right? Like wisdom comes from failing. I was talking to a buddy yesterday, and he's a very successful entrepreneur, but he's found himself in a massive pickle, like a massive pickle he's in. And he goes, man, I don't know that this is going to work out. Maybe this entrepreneur thing isn't for me. And also he's only like 26 or something. And I was like, no, man, well, listen, you might fail big on this one. Like, you might eat this one hard, but you're only 26. You got a long time to recover from it. And second of all, I was like, look, if you make, 10 more of these failures in the next 5 years, you're still going to be younger then than I am now. Right. So like you've got time on your side is what I'm saying. But I also told him, I said, so long as you keep learning from these, so long as you literally examine what went wrong, how to prevent it from happening again, I said, by the time you're like 40, if all you do is fail, you're going to be the world's best consultant because you can just tell everybody what not to do. Definitely don't do this. Definitely don't make this mistake. Definitely don't make that. I just feel like wisdom comes from those, instead of calling it a failure, like a learning experience.
So I want to give a confessional right now because sometimes, it looks like we have all the answers for things. Yeah. But you're telling the story about your friend just made me present to identify this fear that I have. Okay. Currently, I have a fear starting another business and putting money into it because I've already been successful and now I have something to lose. Yeah. But what it is, it's so funny about the self-identity and the looking good thing. Yeah. My biggest fear isn't losing the money. It's that my husband will be upset that I lost money is my fear. That's the story I'm telling myself. The future fantasy is that part of one of the things that the not so pretty cocky part of me is like, well, look, I have this money in the bank. Right. And I think that makes me a good person and I'm desirable because I'm responsible and I don't have debt and whatever. Right. Right. It's like how I boost my own ego, my esteem. Right. And so it's a legitimate fear right now in the background of, well, I can play with these businesses that don't need any money. Right. I'm not afraid of failing and saying I'm going to do it and having it not be successful. But I'm afraid of doing anything that's going to take any significant amount of money. Right. Because then if I lose it, what am I going to say to my husband? Right. That's so funny because it sounds to me, just from hearing you say it, it sounds like it was never the goal necessarily to make money. It was the goal to make a successful business. That's right. That's what feeds me, right? The challenge that was the exciting part. The money is the bonus. Right. So now that you already have multiple successful businesses, really, and have made multiple successful businesses, that there's no challenge there anymore. So really what the challenge is to now make another successful business, right? That's the goal. And make a level of money that I haven't made yet, right? Like I see myself. And the reason I share this is so that other people can think, look, Cinnamon and Dominic are not perfect. We can give you great advice. You should definitely do what we tell you, but we are not perfect. We don't take our own advice a lot of the time. I might as well have been talking to my buddy when I talk to myself. I mean, the only reason that I can speak with confidence on any of these things is because I have failed and been victim to every single one. And I'm willing to bet that I challenged Dominic to call somebody that he has some feelings for that makes him feel very vulnerable and he hasn't done it. There might be some fear there. I don't know. There's definitely fear there. Okay, so let's skip because I'm racing the clock now. Yeah, let's go to number 5. We actually talked a lot about it already and I loved the wisdom that you gave around the fear of asking for help. And this one is really, 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 if this is a fear of yours, I can't encourage you to do it more. You are not in the world alone. It is so satisfying. Fast track to, you don't have to do it alone. So what do you have to say? Do you have a fear of asking for help? Yeah, absolutely. And I think underneath it, what it really is it's a fear of, I guess you could say it's like a fear of admitting that I'm not perfect or admitting that I'm not in control. It's like an inferiority thing.
it's like, okay, if I ask for help, what I'm essentially, and the reverse is true in that, like you were saying, I love to give help. I love to be the one that people ask for help. If somebody calls me and goes, I need your help, I'm like, yes.
My fear of asking for help is different. My fear of asking for help is I don't want to inconvenience someone. So like this is very present for me right now is, oh man, I'm always going to the same person. And I don't want it. So it's like the example they gave in the fear of making the phone call. I don't want to be the nuisance. I don't want to be the one that's like, oh man, I've taught Cinnamon how to write descriptions or come up with a title or a thumbnail a million times. So I'm like looking through like, who else do I know? I think I suck at. Here's my confession. Mentor. Here's my real confession. The hardest part about YouTubing for me still right now is I don't like to come up with the title. I don't think they're good. And I've asked Dominic and I've asked my friend Mary and I asked Anna. I'm like, please, it can take me over so much that it can make me cry that I can't come up with a clever, creative enough title for a thumbnail.
I love your title.
Write a description too.
I've been meaning to tell you this off. I was going to tell you this off air, but I love the title. I love the graphics around it. I love how everything works. I love the purple, everything. I thought it was amazing. That's
like my biggest fear is like, oh man. And that's why that was interesting too about publishing my book is that I still have this belief somewhere in my childhood. I don't even know where it was, but that there's some inadequacy, like guilt for sitting in the classroom and not paying attention when they talk. I don't know. It's like I've even tried to go back and relearn, the paragraph sentence, and it just gets me over and over and over again.
And you know, it's funny. It's like look.
And I'm in a creative industry. It's like a fear of not being creative enough.
Not only that, but you are an author because
I am a #1 best-selling author, and
you're a best-selling author.
The director. So this is true confessional, so that it gives other people permission. Just the other day, the director of workforce development for the county, like a big deal. She's like, Cinnamon, I'm buying your book, and I'm secretly thinking to myself, oh no.
It's so funny. I had two friends call me 2 nights ago and they said, hey, guess what we're doing? And I said, what? They're like, we're having a Dom movie viewing party because I have 2 films that I've been in are on Amazon Prime. And so they're like, we're watching your movies on Amazon. And I was immediately like, I just started apologizing right away. I was like, okay, but right away.
You're going to give all the disclaimers. So I'm going to give the disclaimer. If you go out and buy Generating Your Own Happiness, only read up through chapter 8, and then you can let yourself off the hook.
Right. Or listen, I'm editing my stand-up special right now. I'm in the middle of it, and I'm sending it off to the editor, and I'm watching the footage, and all I'm doing is watching it being that self-critical, just going like, oh, they're going to think I'm so pompous. I got to apologize for that joke. I got to tell them the story behind why that didn't go well. You just once again, saving face. And I think so much of the bravery, when I look at like when you think of bravery, a lot of times people associate it with being like a warrior, right? Mm-hmm. A brave soldier, warrior. And when you think about a warrior's taken the lumps, right? Like they've taken the hits, they've taken the blows, and they're still there to stand and talk about it. I think that really being emotionally strong is being able to take the loss, take the failure, take the mistakes, all of it. Take it, embrace that emotional pain and go, okay, I'm toughing this one out. I'm taking my lashes. How do I learn from this? How do I grow from it? Because I once heard you only make excuses for what you want. As in, right? You only say, okay, it would have been better if, what you're saying is, I wish it was better. Or, okay, this part isn't good because, what you're saying is, that part's not good enough for you.
So say this again, because this is really great. You're saying it a different way, and I want it to sink in. It's like the only reason that you care is because it's important to you. So I call that in my book, I call it an indicator. It's like, those are the best moments, the ding, 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 ding. Hey, you're being told.
Right. So instead of apologizing for it, or instead of making excuses as
acknowledge
to why
that that's important to you.
Yes, you go, okay. First of all, once again, like with you with your book or me with my stand-up special, this was my first book. This was my first stand-up special. Here's the places where I want to grow. I'm going to pat myself on the back for even doing it in the first place. I'm going to pat myself on the back for making it happen. Here are the places I want to evolve. All those places that I'm making excuses.
Okay, so this is beautiful, because the reason I will say, like, only read up to chapter 8, there's 2 reasons. One is because a lot of people have given me kudos up to that. Right. And they've seen something for themselves, which is great, because that's what I really want, is somebody to get something out of it. Right. And then the second half of the book, I know a lot of people never finished the book. Even my closest friends couldn't get through it. Even my mom was like, it's a little repetitive, Cinnamon. But I had doubt that I actually gave them any answers or solutions. Like, I felt like through my book, it was much easier, like in life, to identify the problem.
Yes.
Right? And then my inadequacy is, I was like, well, okay, now we all know we're messed up, and now what?
Yeah, now what?
I didn't give them a solution, because guess what? I don't know. You're messed up. Like, sorry, love yourself anyway, which that is the solution. Since I published my book, I did realize that is the solution. Just love yourself anyway.
Yeah. There are 2 kinds of people in this earth: those who admit that they're messed up, and liars. Those are the only 2 kinds of human beings, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah. No, you're so right. For me, it's funny. Like, I'm literally in my stand-up special, I'm talking to the editor, and I'm like, don't use the last third. Don't use the last third of it at all. And it's the same. I mean, really, it's because
what do you want it to be that you're afraid it's not? Yeah. So what is the beautiful part?
The first 2/3 are great. The last third I bombed, so don't use it.
What is it about it that has it be a bomb for you?
Oh, that's a complex question. There was a lot. I mean, ultimately, here's the big lessons I learned. First of all, in the actual stand-up special that we filmed, it was in my hometown. The special is going to be called the Hometown Special.
Yep.
And I went for 2 hours and 45 minutes. My special was only supposed to be an hour long. I went for 2 hours and 45 minutes. Now, here was the thing, was that the more they kept laughing, the more I kept going.
Yeah, you wanted to get more and more and more.
And here's what ended up happening was I went blasted through the first hour, and everybody's still on high. And I can feel they're still on high. And so then I go, I'm going to keep going. And so then I start improvising and adding all this stuff with people in the crowd. And that's going well. And that boosts up to even higher levels. And then I come back and do like a big thing to where I got like roaring applause and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then
like the artist who didn't know when to stop the painting.
Exactly. I went, all right, let's keep going. And so I kept going. Like, and then the laughter kind of trickled.
Oh, we're tired. This is too much.
Keep going. And the laughter keeps going. Okay, let's keep going. And by the end, it's like you could feel people like just so
be done already.
And that was tough. That was tough. Like that was a tough pill to swallow, because when people were done, everyone was like, dude, yeah, that was super funny, but oh my gosh.
Here's where I want to, if I'm coaching you right now, is like, so what is it that you really wanted that's disappointing to see them
what I wanted, like when I look at it, the lesson I learned, the lesson that I've taken away, and I've taken this away forever, as in, I'm 32 years old. I plan on doing stand-up until the day I die. So what I've learned for the next 90 plus years or whatever, however long I get on this earth, the lesson I learned is you stop at the highest peak. So what I wish I would have done, looking back, is I wish I would have heard that massive roar, the real big one. And even though my show wasn't over, even though I had more to do, I wish I would have went,
but here's what I want. Here's the lesson, Dominic. I got that. Right. But here's the lesson I want you to get that you might not know yet.
Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to try to give it to you and you can see if it resonates.
Okay.
What's so disappointing to you is that you really want to leave your audience
Yes.
on a high.
Exactly.
And you were disappointed that they were like, oh man, right? So it's, yes, you wanted to be successful and yes, you measure it by, but I'm guessing that's like super exciting, right? What is it that feeds your soul about seeing them laughing and having a great time?
Right.
And then all of a sudden they were not.
Right. Right.
So I think that's the part that's like that. The biggest disappointment is actually the most beautiful part of yourself that we don't usually have somebody holding a mirror that we don't get to see, right? Like, so an example for my book, in feeling like I'm leaving people without a solution, that might be true. I might have failed at giving them a solution, but at least I can love myself for wanting to give so generously to them.
Right.
Right? Like that's actually a really beautiful thing about myself.
That's
for you to want to leave your audience, you know, and to prevent the suffering that you put them through.
The promoter called it waterboarding. He was like,
right?
Like,
and you feel bad. You don't want to torture them. You don't want to waterboard them.
Gosh.
But so the person who cares about waterboarding them, that's a good person. You don't want to discount. That's the person that cares. That's not
you only make excuses for what you want, right?
That's why I said, oh, that's so brilliant. You only make excuses for what you want because you didn't deliver on what you wanted so much. Not just to end up a success and end on the high note, but you definitely did not want to waterboard them.
Yeah.
Or anyone. None of us want to do that to people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right. So number 10.
Okay.
I can't stop scrutinizing what people are thinking.
Yeah. I think the reason I think it was that one.
Why does that one stand out?
Well,
or is it not? Or is that not the one? You just thought it was number 10.
Maybe that wasn't the one.
I think to 10 ask for what I want. Like what's right around that? I don't want to look stupid.
Well, I listen, the first rule in my classes is if it feels stupid, you're doing it right. But I think that the last one, the 10th one, was just me. I think that I wanted to touch on that because of the children story.
Yeah, I get that. That lesson of like when you realize that you're being judgmental. So I do have a little story about that. So, one of the things we have in common is I have volunteered for Defy Ventures.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is also a program for incarcerated. And they have an exercise called Step to the Line. And it's amazing. So what you do, they ask people who are incarcerated and people who are volunteers all participate in the exercise straddling this line.
Okay.
And they say, if you have ever done anything illegal before in your life, step to the line. Okay. If you, so there are all these things so that you can relate. Yes, I've done that. Yes, I've done that. Yes, I've done it. And it's, there's this heart-jerking part where you can start to see where you have things in common, and then you can see the very big distinguishing differences if you've lost someone at a young age and they're stepping to the line, or if you were incarcerated at the age of 12 or younger, 10 or younger, 8 or younger. Like those are just like, whoa, you can't even imagine putting somebody in jail and handcuffs at that young of an age. But one of the questions is if you've ever judged people. And so I was and I've done the exercise a couple of times. And again, I'm like one of few people standing on the line. And I'm thinking, do I have a different contextualization? Like I am judging all the time. Like I can't turn off my assessments of, well, that might mean that, and that might mean that. And isn't that interesting? Oh, he's wearing a sweater today and it's still hot here in California. Like I am I can hear the noise in my head that's making assessments that I also associate as judgments all the time.
Right.
But there was that like, okay, well, I'm going to stand here indefinitely, but do they not know? Like there was still that fear of like, maybe they don't know that it's not a bad thing to understand what I'm judging.
I made a judgment right away when you said that, which is that everybody else in that room's a liar. You're the only one. You're the only one with the lie.
And I didn't think they were lying. I just think they don't hear it, right? So my assessment was that they might not be as aware that the valuations this is going on all the time.
Yeah, and it's I think what it could be too is that a thing that makes that exercise difficult is the same way that the kids are afraid of showing their face and their ideas. I think that even deeper than that, people are afraid of admitting those, like especially the undesirable things. So when somebody says, hey, have you judged? We have a judgment on judging. So it takes bravery.
And there might be a have you judged, and everyone steps to the line. And then the next question might be something like, are you judging right now? Right. And people step back because it's like, no, I've reached this place. Because in the exercise, it's really about belonging and relating and empathy. But of course, I'm still judging. I'm judging. Yes. This is the most amazing exercise ever.
Yeah. Right. And also,
it's a judgment.
Honesty is a part of vulnerability. It's a key part of vulnerability. It's what vulnerability reveals is honesty.
So I think they're being honest.
Yes.
I just think that I have a different association with.
And I also think that you having the bravery to be honest about like what you're saying and what you're feeling gives others permission to be brave as well.
That's right. And that's what I tell people. And I think that's the gift that you can give, is that by sharing it, you are giving permission. There are other people.
Right.
So beautiful stuff we learned, Dominic.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. So you ready for the cinnamon challenge?
What do we got?
This is one of my tricks for getting things done. Do something that scares you. So when I
should have known that was coming.
Should have known, could have predicted it. So what I do, just to contextualize for people, not necessarily like, oh, jumping out of an airplane would be scary. When I do I call it a data dump every day. I write my to-do list.
Yeah.
Right. And I identify, I try to identify 3 things, like what's really important to do today.
Yes.
But I also look at that list and intentionally I say, what am I avoiding doing? What is the thing that's scary, most intimidating, most overwhelming? So that, because it works so well for me, that's part of where this challenge is coming from. So if there's anything that you're like, I don't want to make the phone call today, and you're welcome for me challenging you. I'm really cocky confident that this is going to be a big one if you take this one on. Nice.
All right. All right.
Do you have anything that scares you that you could take? So I don't know what that is for me right now. Because when I give the challenge, I'm going to take it on also. Do you have any ideas, Dominic, of what you could take on that scares you?
No, I definitely do.
What is it?
Probably has something to do with a phone call. You might know about it.
Aww. Do you know something that scares me that I'm avoiding? Can you challenge me specifically?
Telling your husband how badly you want to do this.
Oh, that I want to throw some money. Okay, I can have a confession with him for sure. That I'm afraid of putting money in.
Just have a conversation, I think, about the fear itself, about, hey, I really want to do this and this is why. Because I think, just from hearing you said that your fear is that your husband will
be upset if I lose the money.
He'll be upset if you lose the money. But to me, it seems like that's part of your personality, is to take on new challenges and build successful things and grow. There are settlers and there are explorers, and you are definitely a settler. You are definitely an explorer. You're definitely not a settler. You're definitely an explorer.
Although I was accused, my ex-boyfriend before I met my husband, what didn't work in our relationship is that I had roots. Like he was really an explorer. So I do go to this stable place.
But as far as business goes, you have that, you know, it doesn't seem like your interest is necessarily getting the steady paycheck and getting the benefits and just living off that.
It's making a difference in people's lives.
Exactly. So that said, I mean, I think that it's really important, one, for your partner to know that, and that transparency and the honesty, but also that you're open with them about what you want to do.
All right, so here's what's scary then. So if I'm going to up it, I'm going to take the challenge of having the conversation with my husband. I'm also going to spend some money on a risk where I could potentially succeed or fail.
I like it. That sounds really scary.
I have a couple of ways. Yeah.
That sounds super scary.
You don't look like. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, tell your friends. Share.
What scares you? What scares you? That's what I want to know.
When you share what scares you, you're giving other people permission to play big.
I love it.
All right. Adios.